You know, the right to a speedy trial isn't just some legal jargon. It's a promise, one that's literally baked into the Constitution. It's a promise that if you're accused of a crime, you're not just going to be left to languish in jail forever. But what happens when that promise gets broken? Not just once in a while, but on a massive systemic scale.
Take a good look at this number. 67%. That is the percentage of people in India's prisons who are under trials. To put it another way, that means 2 out of every 3 people you see behind bars haven't actually been convicted of anything. They're just waiting for their day in court.
And that really brings us to the heart of the matter, doesn't it? At what point does waiting for justice become its own form of injustice? It was this exact, incredibly important question that finally pushed India's Supreme Court to make a decision that would change the rules for everyone. So, to really get why the court's decision was so huge, we first have to understand the sheer scale of this crisis. We're not talking about a few delayed cases here and there. We're talking about a fundamental breakdown in the justice system, one that essentially put the entire system on trial. Okay, so let's be perfectly clear on what under trial means. This is a person who, by law, is presumed innocent until proven guilty. And yet, these are the very people making up the vast majority of our prison population. Their lives are just stuck on pause while the wheels of justice turn excruciatingly slowly. Now, numbers on a screen are one thing, but what really sparked the Supreme Court's intervention were the stories of real people. In fact, it was 2 specific cases that became the human faces of this enormous problem. On one side, you have Hussain. He was accused of a narcotics offense and had already spent 3.5 years in jail just waiting for his trial to finish. Then, on the other side, there's Aasu. He was convicted of murder and had been in prison for 8 years waiting for his appeal to be heard. You see, 2 totally different stages of the legal process, but the exact same outcome. Years of their lives just lost in limbo. So, the cases of Hussain and Aasu became way bigger than just their own stories. They forced the Supreme Court to face this massive constitutional question head-on. Is the right to a speedy trial, which is guaranteed under Article 21, just a nice idea on paper? Or is it an actual enforceable right that the system must deliver on? And the court's answer? It was absolutely emphatic. They didn't just write a long judgment about the problem. They laid out a practical, no-nonsense blueprint for how to fix it. They issued a whole new set of rules, and this time, they came with deadlines. And this table just lays it out so perfectly. Look at how clear this is. A bail application in a lower court, you've got 1 week. A trial for somebody who's already in custody, 6 months to 2 years, tops, depending on the court. The Supreme Court essentially put a stopwatch on justice. And this is what made the whole thing so incredibly powerful. See, for years, courts had made suggestions and recommendations about speedy trials. But this time was different. The Supreme Court made it crystal clear. These are not optional guidelines. They are mandatory, binding rules for every single judge in India. But look, setting deadlines is one thing. Actually enforcing them, that's a whole other ballgame. And this is where the judgment delivered its true masterstroke. A simple but absolutely revolutionary way to make sure these new rules were actually followed. Just read that line again. The touchstone for assessment of judicial performance. What the Supreme Court did was directly link a judge's career, their annual review, their shot at promotion, to how well they met these deadlines for under-trial cases. All of a sudden, the right to a speedy trial wasn't just a right for the person accused. It became a professional duty for the judge. This one simple move created this powerful incentive that shot through the entire judicial system, turning a vague hope into a hard requirement. Now, the court wasn't naive. They knew that just dropping a new set of rules wouldn't magically fix a system that was already creaking under immense pressure. They openly acknowledged all the deep-seated, practical problems that caused these delays in the first place. And the court didn't pull any punches about the reality on the ground. They pointed to the insane backlogs, the chronic shortage of judges, the poor infrastructure. You know, even the constant adjournments and lawyers' strikes. They knew all of these things create total gridlock in the system. But here's where they drew a line in the sand. Their position was firm. They basically said, yes, we know the problems are real, but a lack of resources can never be an excuse to violate a citizen's fundamental right. The message was unmistakable. The system has to adapt to protect the right, not the other way around.
So, what's the real legacy of this judgment? Well, it's all about transforming one of our most important constitutional rights from this abstract idea into something tangible, something real, for the thousands and thousands of people trapped in the system.
You can see the whole journey right here. It all started with that constitutional promise. That promise was then broken by a massive systemic failure. Then came the court's intervention with the Hussain judgment, which finally created an enforceable right by adding clear timelines and real accountability.
So why does any of this matter to us? Because this judgment is a powerful declaration that justice delayed really is justice denied. It's a massive attempt to make sure that presumed innocent isn't just a nice phrase in a textbook, but a reality that's protected by a system with deadlines and consequences.
And that leaves us with the million-dollar question, doesn't it? The court gave us a brilliant framework, a really clear set of rules. But in a system that's still facing a shortage of judges and a literal mountain of cases, can rules on paper really be enough to deliver justice on time? That remains the ultimate test.